In the quiet suburb of Millbrook Heights, residents prided themselves on knowing their neighbors. Children played freely in tree-lined streets, doors were left unlocked, and the biggest concern was whether the annual block party would have enough potato salad. But on a cold February morning in 2019, this peaceful community would be shaken to its core by a crime so shocking that it would make national headlines. Sarah Chen had always been the type of person everyone remembered. At 34, she was a successful marketing executive with an infectious laugh and an uncanny ability to remember everyone's birthday. Her neighbors often saw her jogging through the neighborhood at dawn, earbuds in, ponytail swinging as she maintained her daily 5-mile route that took her through Millbrook's winding streets and into the adjacent Pine Ridge Park. That Tuesday started like any other. Sarah's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., and security footage from her home system shows her leaving through her front door at exactly 6:15 a.m., dressed in her usual black running gear. She waved to her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who was retrieving her morning newspaper. It would be the last time anyone in Millbrook Heights would see Sarah Chen alive. When Sarah failed to show up for her 9 a.m. client meeting, her assistant Jessica became concerned. Sarah was notoriously punctual, often arriving at the office 30 minutes early with coffee for the entire team. Jessica called Sarah's cell phone repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. The cheerful greeting, asking callers to leave their name and number, would soon become a haunting reminder of a life cut tragically short. By noon, Jessica had contacted Sarah's emergency contact, her younger brother, Michael. Michael immediately drove to Sarah's house using the spare key she had given him months earlier. The house was empty, but nothing appeared disturbed. Sarah's car sat in the driveway, her work clothes were laid out on the bed, and her coffee maker was programmed to brew at 7 a.m., just as she liked it. The only thing missing was Sarah herself. Michael called the police, but was told that adults needed to be missing for 24 hours before an official investigation could begin. Frustrated but determined, he began his own search, starting with Sarah's usual jogging route. He walked every street, knocked on every door, and asked every person he encountered if they had seen his sister that morning. Most had not, but a few residents mentioned seeing a woman matching Sarah's description running toward Pine Ridge Park around 6:30 a.m. Pine Ridge Park was a sprawling 400-acre nature preserve that bordered 3 different neighborhoods. Dense woods, hiking trails, and a small lake made it a popular destination for joggers, dog walkers, and families. But the park also had areas that remained largely uninhabited, where thick canopies blocked out sunlight and created an atmosphere that could shift from serene to sinister in a matter of steps. As Michael made his way through the park's main trail, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. About 2 miles from the entrance, partially hidden beneath a pile of fallen leaves, was Sarah's distinctive pink water bottle. The bottle she had customized with stickers from her various marathon races and the motivational quote, "Every mile is a smile," written in her own handwriting. Michael's hands shook as he called the police for the second time that day. Detective Maria Rodriguez arrived at Pine Ridge Park within 20 minutes of Michael's call. Rodriguez was a 15-year veteran of the force with an impressive track record of solving missing persons cases. She immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation and called for a full search team. Within an hour, dozens of officers, search dogs, and volunteers were combing through every inch of the park, looking for any trace of Sarah Chen. The search continued through the night, with powerful floodlights illuminating sections of the forest that rarely saw artificial light. Volunteers from the community joined the effort, many of them neighbors who had known Sarah for years. They called her name until their voices were hoarse. hoping against hope that she was simply lost or injured somewhere in the vast wilderness, waiting for rescue. On Wednesday morning, the search dogs made a discovery that would change everything. Deep in a section of the park known as Devil's Hollow, about 3 miles from where the water bottle had been found, the dogs alerted their handlers to a shallow grave. The body found there would later be identified as Sarah Chen, and the manner of her death would shock even seasoned investigators who thought they had seen everything. The medical examiner's preliminary findings painted a disturbing picture. Sarah had been struck in the head with a blunt object, likely a rock or heavy branch found at the scene. But that wasn't what killed her. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, and evidence suggested she was conscious when she was buried alive. The thought that Sarah had spent her final moments trapped underground, fighting for air, was almost too horrific for her loved ones to comprehend. Detective Rodriguez knew she was dealing with more than a random attack. The location where Sarah's body was found required intimate knowledge of the park's layout. Devil's Hollow was not visible from any of the main trails and could only be accessed by following a series of unmarked paths that even experienced hikers often missed. This was not the work of a stranger passing through. This was someone who knew Pine Ridge Park intimately. The investigation began with Sarah's personal life. Rodriguez and her team interviewed family members, co-workers, and friends, looking for anyone who might have had a motive to harm her. What they found was a woman who seemed to live an almost impossibly perfect life. Sarah had no known enemies, no bitter ex-boyfriends, no financial troubles, and no involvement in anything that might have put her in danger. She was, by all accounts, exactly what she appeared to be: a kind, successful woman who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as the investigation deepened, small cracks began to appear in the picture of Sarah's perfect life. Co-workers mentioned that she had seemed distracted in recent weeks, often looking over her shoulder and checking her phone more frequently than usual. Her brother Michael recalled that she had mentioned feeling like someone was watching her, though she had dismissed it as paranoia brought on by too much caffeine and too little sleep. The breakthrough came when investigators examined Sarah's phone records. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she had received numerous calls from an unknown number. The calls typically came late at night or early in the morning, and most lasted only a few seconds, suggesting the caller was hanging up as soon as Sarah answered. Phone records showed that Sarah had tried calling the number back several times, but it always went to a generic voicemail that provided no identification. Tracing the mysterious number led investigators to a prepaid cell phone purchased with cash at an electronics store 15 miles from Millbrook Heights. Security footage from the store showed a man in his 30s with dark hair and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. The image quality was poor, but it was enough to confirm that Sarah's stalker was likely male and had taken deliberate steps to conceal his identity. The investigation took on new urgency as detectives realized they were likely dealing with a predator who had spent weeks, possibly months, studying Sarah's routine. Her daily jogs followed the same route at the same time every morning, making her an easy target for someone patient enough to learn her habits. The thought that Sarah had been unknowingly hunted like prey added a new layer of horror to an already unthinkable crime. Rodriguez's team expanded their canvas to include every business and residence within a 5-mile radius of Pine Ridge Park. They were looking for anyone who had noticed suspicious behavior, unfamiliar vehicles, or individuals who seemed to be paying unusual attention to the park or its visitors. The response from the community was overwhelming, with hundreds of tips pouring in daily, though most led nowhere. One tip, however, stood out from the rest. Margaret Walsh, an elderly woman who lived in a house that backed up to the park, reported seeing a man in dark clothing sitting in a white sedan on several occasions over the past month. The car was always parked in the same spot, about a quarter-mile from the park entrance, and the man appeared to be watching the trail where joggers entered and exited. Margaret thought it was odd but hadn't reported it because the man never got out of his car or appeared to be doing anything illegal.
Security cameras from nearby businesses helped investigators piece together a timeline of the white sedan's appearances. The car had been spotted at least 8 occasions over the past 6 weeks, always on weekday mornings between 6 and 8 a.m., exactly when Sarah would have been running through the area. The pattern was clear. Someone had been systematically stalking Sarah, learning her routine and planning the perfect moment to strike. The investigation hit another breakthrough when a forensic analysis of the crime scene revealed DNA evidence that didn't match Sarah's. The sample was small and degraded, but it was enough to enter into the National DNA Database and check for matches. While they waited for results, investigators continued the search for the mysterious white sedan and its driver, following every lead and interviewing every potential witness. The DNA results came back 3 weeks after Sarah's body was discovered, and they provided investigators with a name that would send shockwaves through the community. David Brennan, a 36-year-old maintenance worker who lived just 2 miles from Pine Ridge Park. Brennan had a criminal record that included charges for stalking and harassment, though he had never been convicted of a violent crime. More troubling, employment records showed that he worked for the county parks department and was intimately familiar with every trail and hiding spot in Pine Ridge Park.
When police arrived at Brennan's apartment to arrest him, they found a scene that confirmed their worst fears. The walls were covered with photographs of Sarah, taken without her knowledge over a period of several months. Some showed her jogging. Others captured her at work, at the grocery store, and even inside her own home. The level of surveillance was extensive and deeply disturbing, revealing a man who had become obsessed with a woman who probably never even knew he existed. Brennan's computer contained even more damning evidence. Browser history showed extensive research into Sarah's background, including her work schedule, social media profiles, and personal information that could only have been obtained through careful stalking. He had created detailed maps of Sarah's jogging routes, noting times and locations where she was most vulnerable. The planning that had gone into Sarah's murder was meticulous and terrifying. During questioning, Brennan initially denied any involvement in Sarah's death, claiming he had never met her and suggesting that the DNA evidence had been planted. But as investigators presented him with photograph after photograph from his own collection, his story began to change. He admitted to following Sarah but claimed it was harmless, that he had never intended to hurt her, and that her death was the result of an accident that had spiraled out of control. According to Brennan's eventual confession, he had been following Sarah for months, learning her routines and building elaborate fantasies about their future together. On the morning of February 15th, he had positioned himself along her usual route, intending to finally approach her and ask her out. When Sarah saw him emerge from the woods, she had screamed and tried to run. In his attempt to stop her from getting away, he had pushed her, causing her to fall and hit her head on a rock. Brennan claimed that he had panicked when Sarah lost consciousness, fearing that she would report him to the police when she woke up. In his twisted logic, the solution was to hide her body and hope the incident would be forgotten. He carried the unconscious Sarah deeper into the woods, to Devil's Hollow, where he dug a shallow grave. According to the medical examiner's findings, Sarah had regained consciousness during this process, but was too injured to escape before being buried alive. The trial of David Brennan began 8 months after Sarah's murder, and it drew national attention due to the horrific nature of the crime and the extensive stalking that had preceded it. The prosecution painted a picture of a dangerous predator who had hunted an innocent woman for months before brutally ending her life. The defense attempted to portray Brennan as a lonely, mentally ill man who had never intended to hurt anyone, arguing that Sarah's death was the tragic result of a panic-induced accident. Sarah's family and friends filled the courtroom every day of the trial, determined to see justice served for the woman they had loved. Her brother Michael gave victim impact statements that brought seasoned court reporters to tears, describing the vibrant, caring person Sarah had been and the devastating impact her loss had on everyone who knew her. The community of Millbrook Heights rallied around the Chen family, organizing fundraisers and providing emotional support throughout the lengthy legal process. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and stalking. The evidence against Brennan was overwhelming, and his own confession had sealed his fate. During sentencing, the judge described the crime as one of the most heinous acts he had encountered in 30 years on the bench, noting the calculated nature of the stalking and the unimaginable terror Sarah must have experienced in her final moments. David Brennan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again have the opportunity to harm another innocent person. As he was led away in shackles, Sarah's family felt a measure of justice had been served, though no sentence could ever truly compensate for their devastating loss. The courtroom erupted in applause, not in celebration, but in recognition that a dangerous predator had been removed from society forever. The case had lasting impacts on the Millbrook Heights community and beyond. Sarah's murder highlighted the very real dangers that women face while engaging in routine activities like jogging, and sparked conversations about personal safety and the warning signs of stalking behavior. Local authorities increased patrols in Pine Ridge Park and installed additional security cameras and emergency call boxes along popular trails. Sarah's family established the Sarah Chen Foundation, dedicated to educating women about stalking and providing resources for victims of harassment. The foundation works with law enforcement agencies to improve training on stalking cases and advocates for stronger legal protections for victims. In the years since Sarah's death, the foundation has helped dozens of women escape dangerous situations and has influenced legislation in several states. The investigation into Sarah's murder also revealed troubling gaps in how stalking cases were handled by law enforcement. Many of the anonymous phone calls Sarah had received would not have been enough to secure a restraining order under existing laws. And there was no centralized system for tracking patterns of harassment that might escalate to violence. Sarah's case became a catalyst for reform, leading to new protocols for investigating stalking and improved interagency communication. Detective Rodriguez, who led the investigation, later said that Sarah's case was one that would stay with her forever. The senseless nature of the crime, combined with the extensive planning that had preceded it, represented every law enforcement officer's worst nightmare. A predator who operated in the shadows, stalking innocent victims until he was ready to strike. Rodriguez used her experience with the case to develop training programs for other investigators, helping them recognize the warning signs of escalating stalking behavior. In the years following Brennan's conviction, additional evidence emerged that suggested Sarah might not have been her only victim. Cold case investigators found similarities between her murder and several unsolved disappearances in neighboring counties, all involving women who had been stalked before vanishing. While Brennan was never charged with these additional crimes due to insufficient evidence, the possibility that Sarah's case helped prevent future murders provided some small comfort to her loved ones. The white sedan that had been spotted near Pine Ridge Park was eventually found abandoned in a storage facility that Brennan had rented under a false name. Inside, investigators found additional surveillance equipment, more photographs of potential victims, and detailed maps of parks and trails throughout the region. The evidence suggested that Brennan had been building towards something much larger than Sarah's murder, possibly planning a series of attacks on women who used public recreation areas. Michael Chen, Sarah's brother, became an advocate for missing persons' families. working with law enforcement agencies to improve response times and investigation protocols. He frequently spoke at conferences and training seminars, sharing Sarah's story and emphasizing the importance of taking stalking reports seriously, even when they seem relatively minor. His efforts helped change policies in several jurisdictions, ensuring that future victims would receive the protection Sarah had been denied. The community of Millbrook Heights was forever changed by Sarah's murder. The sense of safety and security that residents had taken for granted was shattered, replaced by a new awareness of the dangers that could lurk in familiar places. Parents became more protective of their children, joggers changed their routines, and neighbors became more vigilant about reporting suspicious activity. While the community eventually healed, the memory of Sarah Chen and the circumstances of her death remained a sobering reminder of how quickly lives could be destroyed.
Pine Ridge Park underwent significant changes in the aftermath of Sarah's murder. The county invested in improved lighting, additional security cameras, and regular patrol schedules to ensure that the park remained safe for public use. A memorial bench was installed near the main entrance, bearing a plaque that honored Sarah's memory and reminded visitors to stay alert and report any suspicious activity. The bench became a place where community members could reflect on Sarah's life and the importance of looking out for one another. The case also highlighted the role that technology played in both enabling Brennan's stalking and ultimately leading to his capture. His use of a prepaid phone and careful avoidance of security cameras demonstrated a level of technological sophistication that challenged investigators to adapt their methods. At the same time, digital evidence from his computer and phone provided the crucial links needed to secure his conviction, showing how modern forensic techniques could overcome even carefully planned attempts at concealment. Sarah's co-workers established an annual scholarship in her name, awarded to young women pursuing careers in marketing and communications. The scholarship program kept Sarah's memory alive while providing opportunities for others to follow in her footsteps. Recipients were chosen not only for their academic achievements, but also for their demonstration of the kindness and community spirit that had defined Sarah's life. Over the years, dozens of young women received support through the program, many of whom went on to successful careers in their chosen fields. The medical examiner who conducted Sarah's autopsy later said that the case had profound impacts on how his office handled similar investigations. The evidence of Sarah's consciousness during her burial led to new protocols for examining victims of apparent accidents or natural deaths, ensuring that signs of foul play would not be missed. The case became a teaching tool in forensic medicine programs, helping future medical examiners understand the importance of thorough investigation even in seemingly straightforward cases. Local news coverage of Sarah's murder and the subsequent trial brought national attention to the issue of stalking and its potential escalation to violence. The case was featured on several true crime television programs and podcasts, helping to educate a broader audience about the warning signs of dangerous behavior and the importance of reporting suspicious activity to authorities. While the attention was sometimes difficult for Sarah's family to endure, they ultimately felt that the publicity served an important purpose in preventing similar tragedies. The prosecution team that secured Brennan's conviction went on to use the case as a model for handling complex stalking and murder cases. The systematic approach to gathering evidence, from digital forensics to witness interviews, became a template that was shared with prosecutors' offices across the country. The case demonstrated the importance of building comprehensive timelines and understanding the full scope of a perpetrator's behavior, rather than focusing solely on the immediate crime. Defense attorneys involved in the case later acknowledged that Brennan's guilt had been clear from early in the investigation, making their primary goal the prevention of a death penalty sentence rather than achieving an acquittal. The extensive documentation of Brennan's stalking behavior, combined with his eventual confession, had made the case virtually impossible to defend. The defense team's strategy focused on portraying their client as mentally ill rather than evil, hoping to secure a life sentence instead of execution. Sarah's death also had unexpected impacts on technology and safety product development.
Her case inspired the creation of new personal safety apps that could detect unusual patterns in phone calls and alert users to potential stalking behavior. Fitness tracking companies began incorporating safety features into their devices, including panic buttons and automatic check-in systems that would alert emergency contacts if a user failed to return from a planned activity within a specified time frame. The Pine Ridge Park murder, as it came to be known in true crime circles, became a case study in criminal psychology programs at universities across the country. Brennan's behavior pattern, from initial surveillance to ultimate violence, provided researchers with insights into how seemingly harmless obsessions could escalate into deadly crimes. The case contributed to improved risk assessment tools that law enforcement agencies used to evaluate stalking reports and determine which cases required immediate intervention. Years after the trial, investigative journalists uncovered evidence that Brennan had displayed troubling behavior during his employment with the Parks Department. Co-workers reported that he had shown unusual interest in female visitors to the parks where he worked and had been reprimanded several times for abandoning his assigned duties to watch women who were jogging or hiking alone. The revelations led to improved background screening procedures for parks employees and better training on recognizing inappropriate behavior in the workplace. The impact of Sarah's murder extended far beyond the criminal justice system. Her case influenced urban planning discussions about the design of public recreational spaces, with experts advocating for improved sightlines, emergency communication systems, and regular patrol schedules in areas where people exercised alone. The concept of defensive design in public spaces gained new attention, as planners sought to balance accessibility and natural beauty with safety and security concerns.
Sarah's story also became a powerful tool in domestic violence and stalking prevention education programs. Her case demonstrated that stalking victims were often unaware of the full extent of the surveillance they were under, and that behavior that seemed merely annoying or concerning could quickly escalate to life-threatening situations. Training programs for law enforcement, social workers, and victim advocates began incorporating lessons from Sarah's case to help professionals better recognize and respond to stalking situations. The forensic analysis of Brennan's computer revealed sophisticated methods for gathering personal information about his victims, including techniques that exploited social media privacy settings and public records databases. This discovery led to improved privacy guidelines and educational campaigns about digital safety. Sarah's case became a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of sharing personal information online, even in seemingly secure environments. Michael Chen's advocacy work expanded beyond missing persons cases to include broader issues of women's safety and violence prevention. He worked with policymakers to develop legislation that would make it easier for stalking victims to obtain protective orders and would create specialized courts for handling harassment cases. His efforts were driven by the belief that Sarah's death could have been prevented if better systems had been in place to recognize and respond to escalating threats. The community response to Sarah's murder also demonstrated the power of collective action in the face of tragedy. Neighbors who had barely known each other before the crime came together to organize safety patrols, share information about suspicious activity, and support the Chen family during their darkest hours. The bonds formed during this difficult time strengthened the community and created lasting networks of mutual support and protection. Detective Rodriguez's work on Sarah's case earned her national recognition and speaking opportunities at law enforcement conferences around the country. She used these platforms to share the investigative techniques that had been successful in solving Sarah's murder, including the importance of following digital evidence trails and building comprehensive timelines of suspect behavior. Her presentations helped other investigators solve similar cases and potentially prevented future crimes. The trial transcripts from Brennan's case became valuable resources for legal scholars, studying the intersection of technology and criminal law. The case raised important questions about privacy rights versus public safety, the admissibility of digital evidence, and the legal standards for establishing intent in stalking cases. Law schools began incorporating the case into their curricula as an example of how traditional legal principles applied to modern criminal behavior. Sarah's murder also prompted changes in how employers handled concerns about workplace safety and employee behavior. Companies began developing better protocols for responding to reports of harassment or stalking involving their employees, whether as victims or perpetrators. Human resources professionals received training on recognizing warning signs and understanding their responsibilities to protect employees both at work and in their personal lives. The case highlighted the importance of interagency cooperation in stalking investigations, as evidence had been scattered across multiple jurisdictions and required coordination between local police, county prosecutors, state crime labs, and federal databases. The successful prosecution of Brennan became a model for how different law enforcement agencies could work together effectively to solve complex cases that crossed traditional boundaries. In the years since Brennan's conviction, Sarah's family has worked to ensure that her story continues to serve as both a memorial to her life and a warning about the dangers of stalking. They have spoken at conferences, written articles, and participated in documentary films about the case, always with the goal of educating others and preventing similar tragedies. Their courage in sharing their painful experiences has undoubtedly saved lives by raising awareness about stalking behavior and its potential consequences. The Pine Ridge Park murder remains one of the most studied cases in modern criminal justice, not because of its complexity, but because of how clearly it illustrated the progression from harassment to violence that characterizes many stalking cases. Sarah Chen's death was a preventable tragedy that occurred because warning signs were not recognized or acted upon quickly enough. Her legacy lies not only in the policy changes and awareness campaigns that followed her murder, but in the countless women who have been protected by the lessons learned from her case. Today, more than 5 years after Sarah's death, the community of Millbrook Heights continues to honor her memory. The annual Sarah Chen Memorial Run draws hundreds of participants who jog through the same streets where Sarah once ran, their presence a powerful statement that fear will not triumph over the simple human desire to live freely and safely. Pine Ridge Park remains open to the public, its trails once again filled with joggers, hikers, and families, protected by the safety measures that were implemented in Sarah's name. The case of Sarah Chen serves as a stark reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, that ordinary people can become targets of extraordinary violence, and that vigilance and community action are essential tools in the fight against crime. But it also demonstrates the power of justice, the importance of never giving up in the pursuit of truth, and the way that one person's life, even when tragically cut short, can continue to make a positive impact on the world long after they are gone. Sarah Chen was more than just a victim of a heinous crime. She was a daughter, sister, friend, and valued member of her community whose life had meaning and purpose. While her story ends in tragedy, the changes that followed her death have protected countless others and will continue to do so for years to come. In that way, Sarah's legacy lives on, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, light can emerge to guide others towards safety and justice.